Hi everyone. So hopefully you have met maybe one or both of us. I'm Lauren and this is Belinda and we're in the customer success team. So yeah, as David mentioned, a couple of our people are stuck in Auckland, so couldn't make it to talk about customer stories. But we thought that talking about compliance trends is a really great fit in this segment just because it's what everyone within the ComplyWith community is experiencing. All of you are getting legal compliance, well, most of you are getting legal compliance results. You're all analysing them and getting them from all different areas of different industries, so it's relevant for everyone. And it's probably one of the most common things that is asked of us is my organisation alone in reporting issues in this area? Like, are we the only ones? Are we the only ones struggling with this? So we thought we'd dive into kind of the top three compliance trends that we've been seeing for 2020. So the first one is privacy, and I think that probably won't be a surprise for anyone. So we are going to be hearing from the Privacy Commissioner a little bit later, luckily, and obviously there's the new Act coming into force on the 1st of December, but there is still a huge amount of issues coming through from the 1993 Act, and some of these might be familiar to probably most of you, if not some of you. So the first issue that we're probably most commonly seeing things reported in is really the use of information and the storage of information. So keeping personal information for longer than it's needed for the purpose for which it was collected. You'll see in the next slide that most of the examples we're getting are issues around this. The second one that we're probably seeing more commonly in clients that are going out to the public and collecting personal information, so whether that's through forms, whether it's through questionnaires, any kind of thing where you're directly collecting information from individuals, is around making sure that you are taking reasonable steps to ensure that that individual that you are directly collecting that information from is aware of the matters in Privacy Principle 3. So just saying Privacy Principle 3 is pretty broad, but hopefully if you're directly engaging in that, you know that that means making sure that they know the details of the agency that's collecting that information, also the agency that's ultimately going to be holding that information, and also whether that individual knows that the collection of this information is either compulsory or whether it's voluntary. And also, what are the consequences of them not providing that information if they choose to not provide it? So making sure that the individual is aware of all of these things is really important, but it's definitely something that a lot of organisations are struggling with. And I think just a lack of awareness generally around what are the different ways that your organisation is collecting information. I know a lot of organisations are really big. Do you have teams going out and asking questions out in the field if you're doing events and that kind of thing? Or are you using your website to collect information from people? And just making sure that when you're doing that, that all of those Privacy Principle 3 matters as they currently stand in the 1993 Act are being articulated to those people. And the last issue is one that probably most of you will be familiar with, and that's around having a privacy officer. So we're still seeing a lot of people just maybe not being aware who their privacy officer is if they do have one, but in some cases not having a privacy officer at all. So you definitely do need to have at least one designated person who is going to take on that role of privacy officer at your organisation, and just making sure that everyone else at the organisation is aware of not only who that person or people is, but also what their responsibilities are, because that should be the person that they're going to with any kind of issues around compliance with the information privacy principles. And it may also be the central point at your organisation that information privacy requests go through. So it is really important that everyone knows who that is. And these are just some examples of compliance issues that have been reported, obviously anonymised, but you'll see that most of them are really around that first example of storing information, making sure you're not keeping it for longer than the reason that you collected it for. So making sure that any historical personal information is being disposed of when it should be.
Cool. So another key trend that we see being reported in Legal Compliance Survey is around public records, actually. So in particular to creation, maintenance, transfer and disposal of public records for public officers. So if you look at that quote, I am not 100% aware of what constitutes a public record. We commonly see these answers where there's a lack of awareness or education for staff about understanding what public records are, and in carrying out their duties and tasks in their roles and creating these records, what the ramifications are for those. And we do commonly see this particularly in those organisations that aren't those core government departments, but are still public offices, so there's room for improvement in that area. And another aspect of public records that we see that is reported in legal compliance surveys is not having a proper record management system, practices, policies and internal frameworks which help them become fully compliant with the obligations under the Public Records Act. But what's really great about seeing the surveys and the trends that come from it is that the ability to identify the gaps within the organisation and actually acknowledging it and creating an action plan to address it. And normally we do see some action taken on it and it goes to resolved, particularly in creating internal frameworks and implementing processes.
Cool. So David touched a little bit on earlier that we are seeing a big trend probably around from mid to late last year, and just more directors, more board members being included in Comply with legal compliance surveys. And Belinda will get into a little bit more about why that is, but in terms of, I guess, what exactly these directors are reporting on in the survey, that's really their obligations that they're personally liable for. So these are the kinds of obligations that if your directors are not currently included in your survey, these things probably are excluded from your survey right now, because these are the things that it's not really appropriate for someone else at the organisation to report on. They're the director's personal obligations. So most commonly, this will be directors' duties under the Companies Act. It'll be officers' duties under the Health and Safety at Work Act, since directors are some of your officers at an organisation. And this is what we see them reporting on most commonly. And we're seeing this both in new clients where we go out to implement, they're making that choice to include their directors. But also a lot of existing clients are coming and saying, can we add directors into our current legal compliance setup? And that's definitely possible. So always happy to help do that.
Cool. So after seeing this trend, we decided to check out what might be some reasons and drivers on why directors and board members are choosing to be included in the survey. So the first one is severe consequences. The Mainzeal case was a sobering reminder that there's severe consequences for directors if they don't follow their legal duties under the Companies Act. And when things go wrong, the consequences can be very severe. So participating in the legal compliance survey can help directors seek to better understand their legal compliance duties and also keep on top of those. The second point is after the global financial crisis and the health and safety failures of the Pike River incident, it's prompted lawmakers to pose more legal accountability requirements on those who lead and govern organisations. And one of the biggest examples is the Health and Safety at Work Act officer duties. So we get quite a few directors being reporting on those in the legal compliance survey. And the third point is around good governance and risk management. So in recent developments, we're seeing more boards participating as well by taking a proactive and robust approach to ensure their organisations are complying with the law. And this really helps ensure that breaches don't happen in the first place, but if something does go wrong, the board can show that they were actually taking steps in trying to mitigate that, and this may be given weight to when regulators are trying to decide which enforcement action to take. And the final point is around leading by good example. So when the governance of an organisation decides to show strong commitment to legal compliance, this encourages the rest of the organisation to report openly and honestly about issues, and it helps identify issues to make sure everyone is on track and compliant, doing things right, and on track to achieve its goals. So if you're interested in including directors or board members in your legal compliance survey, feel free to reach out to your customer success manager or anyone of the ComplyWith staff, and we can point you in the right direction.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, if you have any questions or want to know anything else about whether it's directors or whether it's trends generally, or also helping with the new Privacy Act, which Kate will touch on later as well, then feel free to come up to us afterwards, or that customer success email address is, you'll reach any one of us on there as well. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you.